episode, we're going to be speaking with one of our good friends, the incomparable Jim Marrs, and finding out what he's uncovered about these potentially world-changing events. Jim Marrs is an award-winning journalist and author. He is the author of the New York Times best-selling book, Crossfire, The Plot That Killed Kennedy, which was the basis of the Oliver Stone film JFK. His in-depth overview of the UFO phenomena, Alien Agenda, is the best-selling nonfiction book on the UFOs in the world and has been translated into several foreign languages. He is a frequent guest on several nationwide radio shows and programs, as well as TV. His webpage is jimmarrs.com, so please welcome Jim Marrs. So we're here talking to Jim Marrs. His webpage is jimmarrs.com. Hey, Jim, let's move on to space because not meaning to go back to Hillary, but I'm going to start there. But a recent dump of WikiLeaks emails from John Podesta showed that he seems to have some kind of an obsession with aliens and extraterrestrials. And, one of the things that kind of came forward was the notion, and I need to blow this up because it's really too small for me to read, a threat of extraterrestrial intervention and wars with extraterrestrials. What's going on with that?
All right, let's tie it all together and follow the dots.
Okie doke.
Okay, Podesta and Hillary, the UFO crowd's going nuts because they have come out and talked about the subject of UFOs, aliens, and they're going, oh, good, maybe we're about to have disclosure. Maybe they're going to finally tell us all about it. And yeah, don't count on it. But they're savvy enough to know that, particularly on the left side of American politics, they're more open and interested in the idea of UFOs and stuff. I think it's a cheap political trick, okay? But there's a darker underlining. You know that for years now, there's been these rumors of a secret space fleet, that we are funding a secret space fleet that's out there, maybe with colonies on the moon, maybe Mars, and that we have craft going forward and coming around. Okay.
Well, wasn't Obama supposedly on Mars at one point in time? This is where you get some of those conspiracy theories that you go,
well, that's it. You never quite know. But what we do know is a fellow named Gary McKinnon, hacked into the Pentagon computers, and he was simply trying to find out what information they had about UFOs. And what does he find but the commanding officers and the names of the space fleet? And he had to flee the country. They want him back, okay? And they want to prosecute him, even though the Pentagon has publicly admitted that he didn't do any harm. He's just in there looking around, but they don't want him talking about the secret space fleet. Now, who would know about the secret space fleet? Well, and how would you fund something like that? Well, let's see now. The Pentagon is now up to over $8 trillion that they said they can't account for. And where'd that money go? Well, now let's go. That takes us to the Clinton Foundation. Trillions being laundered through the Clinton Foundation. And she's in big time being paid off by, hobnobbing with all the big defense contractors and the big banks, the very people that would be buying the secret space fleet. And then we've got her 33,000 missing emails, okay? Many of whom, it has been publicly acknowledged, dealt with very classified information. In fact, special access programs. Special access programs are even above top secret. They're the most secret stuff we've got. And she had access to this, and she knows about it. So now, here's all the missing money. It's flowing through the Clinton Foundation, and it's going to the special access, which is what? The secret space fleet? Possibly so. So when she and Podesta come out, number one, they're dangling this as a political come on to people who are interested in aliens. And number two, they know that eventually all this will come out, and they don't want to look stupid in the history books. Okay? So yeah, now the question is, if we are in space, are we in contact with alien life forms? I'm pretty convinced we are, and I think you know that too. Mm-hmm. Now, the question though is this a good thing or a bad thing? Stephen Hawking has said that maybe we ought to be cautious about what we send out into space because we might not like who answers, okay? Number one though, personally, Dr. Rita, I am not too concerned about an imminent invasion from space. And the reason for that is if they are technologically advanced enough to be able to travel the distances through space or through time warps or wormholes and can come visit here, then, you know, if you'll look at the historical record, you'll find that that goes all the way back to biblical times. And Ezekiel, the wheel, goes back to the Anunnaki that was written about by the Sumerians, which predate the Egyptians by thousands of years. Okay, they've been here all along. So, you know, why would they wait until we have space platforms and secret space fleet and laser weapons and stuff? Why didn't they just attack us when all we had to fight back was spears or swords? You know, so no, that doesn't make any sense. But
unless we're just getting too smart, which would be the, you know, we are pretty stupid, but maybe we're getting just a little too smart.
Well, that's why they've got us quarantined. And that leads back into the idea that if you go back to the Phobos 2 launch of the Soviets sending a probe out to the Mars moon of Phobos, and then go to the Mars Observer, which was going to land on Mars and really find out what's going on there, and then you go to the Titan 4, then you come bringing it all the way forward to the Falcon 9 of the SpaceX that blew up. You know, and they saw what's his name? Elon Moon, the guy, the head of SpaceX. He said he's not ruling out the possibility of something striking. In other words, an outside object. So, you know, it's all sounds like that. Yes, they may be trying to put the stop to us. And this goes back to L. Ron Hubbard's book, The Battlefield Earth, which was written back in the 80s, in which he says that, I love it because unlike the new stuff where we got Independence Day where they come and blow everything up and try to kill it, in Hubbard's book he talked about how bankers money to the Galactic Mining Corporation to come and strip mine the Earth of its raw materials. And the mining company's in trouble because they don't think they're making enough money off this to pay back their debt. And it looks like they may have to just sell off the earth to the highest bidder. And it's not alien invasion. It's just business, you know.
Well, you know, and that whole book, I mean, all right, I didn't read the book, but I did watch the movie with John Travolta. And it reminded me, like, right out of Sitchin. You know, they came, there was a primitive race here. They were here for the gold. They were taking it off planet. You know, it made me go, well, I wonder if they knew each other or if there was communication back and forth and if the premise came from Sitchin's work.
That's a good question. And I really don't know, but I do know that L. Ron Hubbard had a really fascinating and widely varied career. He was an adventurer. He traveled the world. He wrote, since the 30s and 40s, he was writing pulp fiction. You know, he wrote Westerns. He wrote spy novels. He wrote, you know, all this good stuff. And then he got into science fiction. And that's where I first learned of L. Ron Hubbard. I'd never heard of Scientology, and I'm not a Scientologist. But boy, I loved science fiction back then, and I was reading Arthur C. Clarke, Ray Bradbury, and L. Ron Hubbard. His 10-part series, Mission to Earth, is just a real hoot, man. I mean, he's taken on the CIA, the FBI, the mafia, everything that's going on. He's on it, man. He doesn't particularly hide it very well. Okay, in fact,
but it's fiction, so it's okay.
So well, that's why he got away with it. So I'm telling you, he knew a lot of stuff, and he was in connection with a lot of stuff. I was surprised to find out when I was researching my book on the Army's remote viewing unit, SciSpies, that L. Ron Hubbard was in there early on as they were working on psychic phenomena. So he was just into all kinds of stuff, and I think he knew a whole lot more than he ever said in the nonfiction way. But he really wrote about all this stuff, and I think he knew what he was talking about. And in fact, what really got him launched on Battlefield Earth was in 1977 when we launched the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, which are now, by the way, outside the solar system. They're the deepest objects that man has ever, artificial objects done by man, that's the farthest they've ever been. And Voyager 2 even did close flybys of Jupiter and Saturn, gave us a lot of information we didn't know before then. So Hubbard read about this and then thought, well, because on Voyager 2, which is now way out in the universe somewhere, it's still working and it's still broadcasting. And on it, there's this golden disc that has recordings. Okay. And it's got depictions of a human male, human female. It's got a kind of a diagram showing where Earth is, almost a road map. And that's what's concerning Stephen Hawking. He says maybe I'll not be showing them exactly where we are. And I'll tell you why, because on this disc is all of this Earth music, everything from tribal chants to to modern music, and of course the classicals. There's Bach and Beethoven, Mozart, they're all on there. But what killed me is when I read that also on there is Johnny Be Good by Chuck Berry. I'm just wondering what some alien race out there in the universe, what are they going to think about when they hear, we're down in Louisiana, next to New Orleans, we're back in the woods.
They're rocking, come on.
Hey, those Earth people, they got it, man. I'm telling you. Isn't that fascinating? Just all this stuff goes on. See, but you don't really get told any of this stuff. But that's why you need to read Battlefield Earth.
And didn't they come out with a revised edition of that?
Yes, they have. That's the whole deal. Just this summer, they've come up with a whole new expanded as if you needed that. But it's really interesting. You've got a real in-depth interview with L. Ron Hubbard. You've got his original notes and all kinds of interesting stuff about how that came about. It was unfortunate. I did not appreciate the movie, I guess, as much as you did. But then I think the problem was it really didn't follow the book. The book is so expansive and covers so much territory and goes, whichever way, your mind just bounces around like a pinball ball, And I think they tried to boil it down and make it into just a, kind of conventional sci-fi script, and I'm not sure it worked. And it's not my opinion. Most people have panned the movie, and I think that's why it's kind of prevented some people from reading the book. But I know you've had the experience where you read a book and you say, "Oh, wow, that's fantastic," and then you see the movie, you go,
Oh yeah, Clan of the Cave Bear. When that movie came out, I was so excited, and it was just so bad.
That's right.
And I dragged a bunch of people with me to it, and I was like, sorry.
That's embarrassing. but the book was good. Yeah. So anyway, that's out. But I'll tell you, if you're not up for reading a thick book, here's the thing that really fires me up. They've got an audio book out that to me is just boggles my mind. You need to look that one up, okay? I think you can get it maybe for real cheap, a couple of bucks, $3 or $4, and yet it's the book in audio using 68 different character actors.
Really?
197 characters, 150,000 sound effects, and a full-blown, written specially for that, musical score. It's like a movie for the mind. So if you're planning on taking a long trip, or if you have a long commute, you need to get that and stick it in your car and just listen to it as you go along. It's just because you can just picture everything happening and everybody's talking and sound effects, and it's really pretty amazing.
Yeah, I love audiobooks for long trips. I mean, that's my favorite thing to listen to versus, music or the radio, because it just gives you something to do, gives your brain something to think about.
That's right. Just keep your eye on the road, but let your brain wander.
But I want to come back to that SpaceX thing, because I haven't seen the video. Well, actually, I saw the video of it blowing up, but then I saw somebody posting on, the all-important place, Facebook, that there was actually, if you look really hard, that you could see a projectile going into it. Have you investigated to see if that is truly the case?
I've looked at that, and quite frankly, I couldn't tell you one way or another. There does look like something there. I'll tell you what tilts me. If this was the only instance of this, I would be disinclined to think that there was any outside entity that was involved in the explosion of the SpaceX. But I know about all this stuff far back. You go back to Titan IV, 1993, and it blew up at 100,000 feet. And right then, the project manager said the Air Force had film showing an object striking the Titan IV. So, see, it's happened before. And,
but is it us or is it them?
think it's them, because that goes back again to my work with remote viewing, and they were telling me about the buckyballs. I said, what's the buckyballs? Balls. They said these are little objects that are floating around up in orbit above the Earth, and they call them buckyballs because they're round, but they're multifaceted, like a geodesic dome house that Buckminster Fuller would make. So they call them buckyballs. And they said, now when there's a launch going off and it's just going to go put a communication satellite in orbit, or whatever normal everyday thing, then everything seems to go fine. But if there's a classified launch or a military launch, there's something about it that's a little bit not the usual run-of-the-mill launch. These buckyballs will drop out of orbit, go down and hit it and blow them up. And that's why I say that I think we're being kept quarantined. Well, think about it, Dr. Rita. 40 years ago we put a man on the moon, but we can't go back? We can't go anywhere else?
Well, yet another conspiracy theory, but I have a question about the buckyballs. But, did we even go to the moon in the first place?
That's a good question.
But all right, but let me go back to the buckyball, and then we can come back to that, because if they are seeing these buckyballs happening during classified launches or whatever the circumstances is, that also infers that they have a pipeline into what we're doing on the deepest levels.
Exactly. But you should have known that already, because if you go back to the Apollo program, you'll find out that all of the important Apollo missions, the date and time for the launch was set not by any scientific criteria, but by the constellations. The movement,
really?
The location of the stars. Yeah, check with Richard Hoagland, and he came out with that, and then others going, well, that can't be right. And then some NASA official said, well, that can't be right. I'm going to check on that. And then came back and said, holy cow, he's right. It's all due to a certain the alignment of the planets.
When the moon is in the 7th house.
And Mercury aligns with Mars.
That's it.
Okay, but now, so think about that. Whether you want to believe in astrology and the alignment of the planets or whatever, it doesn't matter. The fact is, somebody with enough power and authority to set the Apollo missions time and launch codes and launch times does believe in that. So,
I always thought it was because it would release the rocket off the Earth so that it would hit a certain synchronized orbit with the moon, and it was this whole calculated, go around the Earth a few times, and the moon would be in the right spot.
It kind of was. It just wasn't done from a scientific. It's why do you think we have all these weird things like 9/11 and the Kennedy assassination, occurred in Dealey Plaza, which is a triangular-shaped plaza, and where the first Masonic lodge in Dallas was situated, and that it also sits on the 33-degree parallel. There's just weird things going all around. I could get in and tell you about the 4 Kennedy brothers that all died in different times, different years, different locations, and yet according to sidereal time, which is keeping time by the constellations, okay? This is what the ancient mariners and the NASA and the military people, they all died in the same hour. How is that possible?
A really good coincidence.
There you go. Yeah, it's just coincidence.
It just happened. But wait, all right, let's go back to the moon for a second, because I watched this documentary. I've heard the whole Van Allen belt argument and, the flag waving argument, and I was like, can't really tell. But they brought up, and it's kind of an old documentary, about the pictures and the lighting on the pictures. And of anything that I have seen to date, that had my eyes going,
I know.
Okay, I don't know how they did that.
And keep in mind that they still maintain that they carried no lighting equipment to the moon. And yet we see in those photographs where, the light's coming from the right, and yet the backside of the module is lit up. Where'd that light come from? Come on. I think they're playing with us now. But here's the key point. Ask yourself this. If you're NASA and you have the original videotapes of the moon landing, wouldn't you keep that under tight lock and key and very secure? Because that's the most historic event in the history of humankind, right?
They're missing, right?
They're gone. They
Yeah,
said, well, we kind of taped over and we didn't think anybody would care, you know. Now, wait a minute. Did we go to the moon? If we went to the moon, how come they don't have the original photographs and films? I'm sorry. There's something really, really funky going on there. And the key thing is that number one, we had 22 of those Atlas rockets that sent the Apollo to the moon, those 6 moon landings that we're told about. But then they said, oh, well, and I'm old enough to remember when, before we went to the moon, the idea was we're going to go to the moon, we're going to colonize the moon, we're going to mine the moon, and we're going to, you know, make enough money to pay for the space program. And then we go there 6 times and say, well, nothing much's there. And we could really, it's expensive, so we're not going to go back. And they still had 22 of those rockets ready to go. That's like building a Rolls Royce and saying, well, we can't afford the gas. You know, there's something weird about the whole thing. And yet I've met some of the astronauts. I met Dr. Edgar Mitchell. I met Alan Bean. I met whoever. Anyway, 2 or 3 of them actually. And I can't believe that they're liars, okay? But on the one hand, they're all military people, which means they're under military authority, military discipline, can be thrown in Leavenworth for the rest of their life if they don't follow orders, okay? So that's a pretty good temptation to say whatever they want you to say. I think there's also a good chance that they were, well, for want of a better expression, brainwashed. Mm-hmm. Picture this. You take Aldrin and Armstrong and you tell them you're going to the moon. And you train them and they go through all the stuff. They put on the suits, doing all the stuff, put them in the rocket, and shoot them off. Okay, and they go up into low Earth orbit, which was real easy. We could do that at that time. And then you push a button and the cabin fills with some kind of gas and it knocks them out. And you give them post-hypnotic suggestion. You're on the moon, you're doing this and that. It's really great. And then you say, okay, you're heading back. And then, you know, then you suck gas out and you put in a little oxygen. They start waking up and they're, wow, must have dozed off. And here we are back to Earth. And then they splash down, they gather and put them on the ship, and everything from then on, everything we see is legit. And I think that's entirely possible. And one reason for that is because I saw an interview with Armstrong, I guess it was, or maybe it was Buzz Aldrin. The reporter asked him what I thought. Well, number one, if you think about it, you don't see many interviews with those guys.
No.
Charles Lindbergh flew the Atlantic. He was hailed as a hero, toured all around the country, talked to everybody and anybody. But no, you didn't get to talk to these guys, except in very formal settings under strict conditions, okay? But in one of them, the reporter actually did ask him a good question. He said, what did it feel like to be on the moon? And he really couldn't quite come up with an answer. And I just found that very, very strange.
But,
so at this point, I'm not touting the idea that we never ever went to the moon. Although I still think that's in the realm of possibility.
You know, but like Edgar Mitchell was very available for interview and definitely had his opinion on things. And so I feel like if anybody was going to come forward that was an astronaut, even on their deathbed, it would have been him. Okay,
but see, if he had been mind controlled, he really didn't know and couldn't command that. But what did he talk about? Aliens, taking their technology. So, you know, I think at the deepest levels, he knew and understood what was going on, even though he probably never went up with the space fleet. So there you go. Again, I'm not saying we never went to the moon. I still think maybe some of the later flights, missions, we actually did it. But I think on Apollo 11, I think there's too many dicey questions and missing tapes and photographs, okay? It just adds up to there's something flaky about that whole thing. And it really needs to be investigated, but we're not going to get that under Hillary.
Well, you know, I had gone to Houston, to Cape Canaveral, whatever it is in Houston, and they had a Saturn V rocket on display, the whole thing, the entire thing. And it was in the segments, so you could actually kind of look in the ends of them. And, you know, I came out of the... I worked in Silicon Valley in high tech, and so, you know, I know what a PC board is and the evolution of that technology. And I'm looking at how they built these things, and I'm going, we went to the moon with less technology than I have, like, definitely on my cell phone, like on a watch. I mean, there was nothing in there.
Junior high kids today with their iPhones and their iPads have more computer technology than they had to go to the moon. It's wait a minute.
And it was precise. It was precise.
Yeah. And the thing that always gets me too is that, I mean, in fact, I can tell you this almost for true. Nixon was very worried, and the people around him, that if we went to the moon and came back, everybody's going to say, prove it. And so we had to have films, we had to have photographs, but there was a very good possibility because those capsules are not, lead plated or whatever, and they have to go through the Van Allen radiation belt. So there's a very good chance that coming back through, all the film's going to get fogged because of the radiation. So he went to Stanley Kubrick and secretly had Kubrick tape a moon landing. Okay, now that I've seen the documentary with General Haig and with Rosemary Wood, his secretary, and with Stanley Kubrick's widow, and they talk about this. All right, so that's a done deal. Now the question remains is, what did we see? Did we see a real moon landing, or did we see Stanley Kubrick's version? We don't know.
We don't know.
And we may never know because NASA said they just taped over everything. Sorry, we lost all those tapes.
I mean, one of my favorite YouTube videos is, the fake moon landing where, like Neil Armstrong or whoever is like, hey, we're on the effing moon. Yeah, the effing moon. And then the light fixture falls down and, the tech guy comes out and puts it back up. It's hysterical.
Well, and you know what? There's kind of a real life counterpart to that is that, the signal sent back from the moon. And by the way, that's easy enough. They're saying, yeah, but we got messages from the moon. Well, hey, we had the technology of placing a repeater on the moon. Okay, we could land a piece of equipment and then broadcast a message to it, and it would repeat it, send it back. And so anybody on Earth could pick it up and say, hey, we got a message from the moon. So that wasn't any big deal.
That's Jim Marrs. His webpage is jimmarrs.com. So until next time, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. My webpage is soulhealer.com. Be blessed.